All right, everybody. Good evening. Glad that you are here. This is our final Parenting Through the Stages class, and we have made it to week 4. And I'm thankful that you signed up and that we had a chance to interact over the last 3 weeks. Tonight, making number 4. So I just want to start us with prayer. And my parents are joining us tonight, Egerton and Joy Anderson, and you'll see them. You can see them in the corner right now, but you will see them in full effect after we just do our little intro. So let me pray for us and then we'll get started. Lord, thank you for tonight. Thank you for just the gift of being a parent and the gift of having a parent, Lord. It is a blessing from you, and children are a blessing from you, and we're thankful regardless of which side we're on, whether we're the parent or the child. We know that you instituted that order, and we are so thankful for what you have done and continue to do, and the parents that you've given us and the children you've given us. So I just pray tonight as we wrap up our class that you would just be with us, let technology work on our behalf, and just let everything just really allow us to learn and grow more in regards to how you have structured the family and how we can live accordingly. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So I'm just going to kind of do a little overview based on what we've talked about in previous weeks, and so that's where we will begin. So we've kind of the last 2 times talked about what makes parenting so difficult. And one thing is, of course, we have an enemy, and the enemy does not want families to prosper, does not want marriages to stay together. And so anything the enemy can do to break a marriage up and to get in the middle of marriage, the enemy will do. And I think, unfortunately, sometimes we allow the enemy to. It's not just that we can say that I didn't want to, the devil made me do it. It's literally we sometimes allow the enemy, we give the enemy a foothold. But also, things are constantly changing. We know that when we talked about those life stages of children, it is a constant change. And tonight, we're focusing not on the constant change because we're getting to that 3rd and final stage. And so the first stage was the commanding stage. That's birth to 12 years old. And we know so much takes place and changes developmentally at those ages. But then we get to the coaching stage. And that was when puberty hits, and then all the way through adolescence, and so much going on with hormones and physical and emotional changes and development. But now tonight, we are going to deal with this last stage, which is the counseling stage. And it's basically when you become, quote unquote, an adult in the US at age 18 until death. And so let's talk specifically about that. So the counseling stage, or the counseling parenting stage, 18 to death, and think of it as the voice of a therapist. So a therapist doesn't come to your house and kind of tell you what to do and help you. You actually go to the therapist. And so literally the counseling parenting stage is the voice of a therapist. You come to us and we will help you. So at this stage, the parent is no longer kind of coming to the child. The commanding stage we talked about, birth to 12, is literally where you're there, you are telling and directing every step of what's taking place with your child. But then when you get to the coaching stage, you're there as a sports coach who is really kind of helping guide as the child makes decisions and makes choices. But in this last stage, you are there as a therapist who is there to help when help is needed. Okay, so and it's hard for some parents, which we may talk about tonight when we talk to my parents. So parenting adult children, let's talk about that. And I wanted to give us some practical thoughts and steps and kind of directives that we could have when we're thinking about how do we, as parents, parent our adult children. Now, most of you on here, in fact, I think all of us, none of us have adult children, so we're dealing with young ones, but we still have our parents that we are dealing with. If we're blessed enough to still have our parents alive, we know that there are some definite challenges in dealing with our parents, and also with our parents dealing with us. It's both ways. So here are some practical thoughts about this. Number 1, recognize and respect your differences. You know, you have to think about the fact there's personality differences between you and your parents. There's difference in culture. they may have been raised, my parents were raised in a completely different culture, so their experiences at my age were different. But well, by my age, they were in the US, but their experiences were very different growing up than mine were because of where they came from. They are from Guyana, South America. And so that is something to really recognize. And we have to respect that difference when we're thinking of how we parent our adult children. Also, share your wisdom and insight without being critical. You know, it's okay to share your wisdom and share your insight, but don't be critical of what your children are choosing to do or not do. You're there to help. You're not there to kind of dictate and harm them with your words. Also, setting boundaries and two-way boundaries, because boundaries are only efficient and work when there's boundaries from both sides. So knowing what areas to step into or what areas, and even sometimes asking for, can I say something in regards to this? Or on the other side, the child going to the parent and literally saying, I want to get your advice on this. So, but the boundaries are set up to protect both sides and to protect the relationship too. Next, be a consultant, not a CEO. So be there as a guide when you are asked to give information, give instruction, but not a CEO who is controlling and directing the operation of your child. Because, you know, the Bible says that when we raise our children, we are to shoot them out in the world as arrows. Well, once we have done that, we've done our job. And so we're now there just to literally ask if, you know, kind of to give advice when it's needed and to give counsel, but not to kind of be available, not to be a CEO, you know, managing the life of the child. So be a sounding board for adult children. So just be there to listen. Be there to listen. Mom and Dad, I don't know, something is creaking on your side. I don't know what it is, but something's creaking. Kind of whistling. I don't know what that is, but it sounds like a fan or something. So, but here we go. I'm going to go backwards. So be a sounding board for your adult children. Don't operate with this mindset of just talking. Listen. Your children want to hear from you in most situations, but it's for you to come to them after they have come to you. So it's not this thing of you're constantly going to them, but literally you are there just to be a sounding board. All right. So James 1:19 says, my dear brothers and sisters, understand this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. So what's that all about? Well, that's saying, and then parents can kind of take this and apply it to their situation to where what is probably the most beneficial for that child is for you to just listen to them. Just listen, not to come with, you know, well, this is what I would do. Just listen and let that be kind of the mantra that you're guided by, is James 1:19. So I've asked my parents, and I'm going to actually unshare so that you can see them. And I'll let them introduce themselves. Dad, you have to back up a little bit so we can see your whole face. So, so why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves? Mom, why don't you go first?
I'm Joy Anderson, mother of Pastor Darwin Anderson.
A little bit about your background. You want to tell a little bit about your background, what you did for a living? You want to tell a little bit about your background, what you did for a living, that type thing?
Of course. I was born in Guyana, South America, and I have been a registered nurse for about almost 50 years. Retired now and loving it.
Awesome. Dad?
Yeah, I am Egerton Cleopas Anderson. Born June 25th, 1939, Guyana, South America. Awesome. I was a policeman in Guyana, migrated to the US of A on April 9th, 1971. Worked in Wall Street for 7 years, came to Florida, went back to school, got an associate degree in electronics. I raised 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, one of whom is Darwin Sheldon Anderson. Married to Jacqueline Altia Anderson.
Wow. Full of information. Yeah. Okay, so I will say there was a part of that story that I did not know. I did not know that you guys know. I knew Wall Street. I did not know that you guys came to the States on April 9th. I did not know that. I did never.
Yeah, you came on April 9th, and you were born in 71, and you were born in 72.
I knew you came in 71, but I didn't know the date. So that's interesting. Grace Townsend says, welcome, Mr. and Mrs. Anderson. So that's good to know. You guys have been married for how long?
How do you hear?
Will be 53 years, November 18th this
53
year.
years. Great. And Dad, you have a birthday in a couple days.
Yes, day after tomorrow.
You'll be 81. Awesome.
Yes.
Praise God.
Awesome.
I am here to receive any presents you are sent.
Well, I have a gift for you, and the gift is happy birthday.
Okay.
That's your gift.
Whatever it is, I receive it with thanksgiving and joy.
I'm sure you will.
Yes.
All right. So, question for you, and you guys that are on tonight. Let me see who's on. We've got Chan, Chris Duncan, the Whites, Ella Deenan, Ernesto, Grace, Shar and Paul, and Sterling and Kamira are all on tonight. So glad to have you guys. So you guys start typing out your questions in the chat or in the Q&A part, and we will do our best to answer whatever you put in there. So here we go. So I'm going to pose these questions to this one. I would say is for you, Dad. What is the biggest challenge in parenting adult children? What would you say is just it's difficult? What makes it difficult parenting adult children?
What makes it difficult to parent adult children? What's your challenge?
Well, every child is different. Every child is different. It was harder for me with Dwayne than it was with you. And Danette is totally different also. And the whole thing is that children have to listen when your parent talk to you, because the parents were here before you in this world, and of such we have more experience than you do. So it would be nice if they would listen to you sometimes and take some advice.
So you would say then, as parenting an adult child, it's difficult because you expect your child to listen, but they don't always listen.
No, they don't always listen. Do you?
No, I do not always listen. You are correct. Yes.
Okay.
You guys can see where I get my personality, can't you? Mom, what would you say is the biggest challenge in parenting adult children?
I would say the biggest challenge is to always remember, be cognizant of the fact that they are no longer little children. They are adults. Therefore, we have to respect that as older parents. We have to respect that and give them space and to make their own decisions, even if we think the decision is not how we would make it, because that's how they learn. It builds character and growth for them to sometimes fail and recover. So to me, that's the biggest thing, recognizing they're adults. And therefore, we need to step aside and give them space to make decisions.
Good. It's good. Mom, you can answer this next one too first, and then Dad can. What is something you have learned that is invaluable to properly parent adult children? So if you were giving advice, what is something, just a little nugget of advice?
Something I've learned is that adult children value their parents' input, but they do not want them to make decisions for them. And we must respect each other. It's very important that the parent respects the adult child and versus the child respects the parent. And we always want to lend support to our adult children, when it's necessary, but we have to be careful as well.
It's good. Dad, what about you?
Good. I see what happened.
Okay. All right. So go
Praise
ahead.
God.
You can get off the phone now. You can get off of the phone. Perfect.
Yeah, I think once they became adults, you know, we can have more adults conversations.
Right.
I think that's when it was more of a friendly, still a parent, but friendly chats.
Nice.
Yeah.
No friends. No friends.
No friends. We got you. We got you. All right. So here's another question from Shar. What do you do when you disagree with how your child is parenting their own children?
Pray about it.
What was the question?
What do we do when you disagree how your children are parenting their children? Pray about it and ask them why do you do what you do?
Okay. Dad, I would
Let
love,
me give you my honest answer.
please.
I do not know really how to answer that question because I've never experienced it. I never had a father's love. I don't know what a father's love is. I understand that, right? So I never had a father or a mother to disagree with me how I raise my children. So, you know, if I'm to disagree with you, how you raise the children, I think I'll tell you how I feel, and that's about it.
Right. And I think that's okay. I think it's okay to, you know, share how you feel. But I think at the end of the day, that's where it has to end. It's just, I'm sharing how I feel, and then that's that. And I
Right.
think sometimes the danger is, and this is where the boundaries come in, is if the child has said, when it comes to parenting, you can say nothing, then okay, well, then I guess that's what they want. But if they've welcomed that, then I think it's an okay and acceptable thing to do. And it could be a fine line of, okay, how much can I step into this or not step into it? But I think when you have a good relationship with your child, then you can say certain things, and it's all in how it's said as well too, and the delivery is very important, you know. So yeah, and yeah, so just so you guys have a frame of reference too, my dad's father died when he was 8, and his mom died when he was 14 or 15.
15.
15.
15.
Right. So he really grew up, you know, and his sister is 17 years older than him. So he
18.
18, excuse me, 18. So he kind of grew up with that type of, you know, no father. He had some uncles in the picture, but not a father figure, I guess you could say. So
That's right.
that leaves voids that, you know, as you grow, you try to figure out how do you fill this. And, you know, in our day and age, there's a lot of help to figure out and to know that without certain things, there's going to be voids in your life, and there's going to be, it's going to be something that you're going to have to understand. You don't know how to deal with certain things because of these voids. But back when my dad was a kid, nobody was telling you or thinking about that. All there was go work and help take care of your mom, you know. And so with that mindset comes hurt and pain that you take in and throughout your life that you kind of have to figure out at some point, hopefully, how to deal with. So yeah, and I think you've done a great job, Dad, with what you have, with the cards you were given, with the life that God gave you. You did all that you could. You did your best, and that's all you can do, you know. So yeah. So Chris Duncan says he's laughing. Ha ha ha. He laughed at what you said, Dad, about they're not my friends. So yeah, that is pretty funny. So yeah, so you guys need to continue asking some questions. I do have another question here for you guys. Dad, you can answer first. What responsibility do you see in regards to your grandchildren? What do you see as your responsibility?
What was the question?
How do you see, what is your responsibility regarding the raising of your grandchildren?
Well, that's a very touchy subject. I love my grandchildren. I love to babysit my grandchildren. But on the other hand, when to go to see them, I have this mindset to just spoil them rotten, and to get back at my children for, for, what they put me through growing up.
Yeah. So your responsibility is
That's
to,
the way I feel about it.
gotcha. So your responsibility is to spoil them rotten.
My responsibility is, yes,
Yes. Spoil
spoil
them.
them. Love them. You love them, you spoil them and send them back to their parents.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Mom, what about you? What responsibility do you see in regards to your grandchildren?
Well, I always think about that. Before we had grandchildren, I've heard people say, oh, we're going to spoil the grandkids. That's our responsibility. Now, I beg to differ with that, because at the end of the day, the children are going to be the ones who are going to suffer. So my responsibility as a grandmother, I think, is to help you and Jacqueline, support you in raising your children in, I would say, in a very godly way, so that they can become productive citizens later. I don't want to spoil them. I always think about that. I love them, but I don't want to spoil them, because I know at the end of the day, they're going to have to reap the benefits of that spoil, and it's not healthy. So I would say to support you and Jacqueline to raise these grandchildren in the fear and admonition of the Lord, so they can grow up to be productive citizens.
That's good.
Very healthy.
That's good. All right, we got a question from Shar. Shar said, it could be Paul or Shar. What's the best part about being a grandparent? And Dad, I think we know for you, it's you get to spoil them rotten.
The best part about being grandparents. Who answers first? Who do you want to answer first?
You can, Mom. You can.
I think the best part is, I don't think there's anything better in the world than having grandchildren. The love that we have for them, it's unexplainable. We love our grandchildren, and we love visiting with them. We love to, whatever it takes for the grandkids to grow up well, we want to do, right? So the best part about being grandparents, are to have your grandchildren, especially when they are well trained, like your kids.
Well, thank you.
Oh yes.
Jacqueline does
Not because they're my grandchildren, but we keep them in line.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Awesome. Dad, what about you?
Well, I think the best part of being a grandfather is to love my grandchildren as much as I could. And I love them dearly. I don't think there's enough you could do for them or with them, because you only have them for a short amount of time. But I think that's the best thing.
That's good. That's good. So Sterling and Kamira asked a very important question, and it's more so for Jacqueline and I. How did you start the boundaries conversation with your parents? So I'll let Jacqueline think on that while I answer. And I think what we did, what I did, is as situations would arise, because there are certain things you don't even know that you're going to have to deal with this. And so unfortunately, sometimes you're not prepared for dealing with it. And so when it does come, you don't address it in the best way. But I think as different situations come about, that you literally are like, okay, so we didn't think we were going to have to deal with this. And so you talk, Jacqueline and I would talk and say, how do we want to address this with my parents and your parents? And so we do operate with, if it's my parents, then I talk to my parents. If it's Jacqueline's parents, then she talks to her parents. But yeah, there's not been, I wouldn't say there's been a lot of that I've had to deal with my parents as far as boundaries go. I think they have, they definitely share their opinion and share things that they feel would be helpful, but they pretty much leave it there. Now, I do have one parent who is a worrier and one parent who is not. And so the worrier usually has more to say, but the one that's not a worrier usually does not have more to say. So, but yeah, really just as the situations would come, we would address certain things. So yeah. What about you, Jacqueline?
So with my parents, so I grew up in a home where my parents were very, very controlling, but not really, I don't mean that in a negative way. They are just very fearful people.
Well, you can share why too, because there was a reason why.
Yeah. So I was born with a hole in my heart, and so I was sick from the time I was born until I had open heart surgery when I was 5 years old, and we were just waiting that entire time for me to have surgery, and it was just, I was always in the hospital. I was always sick, and so I think my parents were just always afraid that I was gonna die, and so my parents really parented me, as well as I have a twin sister, parented us very, very
Differently.
shielded. Yeah, and very differently. I was shielded very much. My sister, her personality is more independent than mine. So she just grew up that way. She kind of was like, I can take care of myself. Even when my parents had to be at the hospital with me, she was just, okay by herself. But anyway, so in that, I didn't really see that they were so protective until I got married. I mean, I literally had to step out of being in my home to see just the difference in how parenting can be. And so for the first couple of years of our marriage,
It was hell.
he's so dramatic and exagerates.
No, it wasn't.
No, it was not.
No,
it was close, but it
No, it was
wasn't.
not. It was not.
But only because it was extremely hard for me to break away from my parents and to lean on Derwin as the leader of our home, to lean on him for anytime we were making decisions. I was always calling my parents, and Derwin's like, hello, it's not their decision, it's our decision make. So that was really, really hard for me. And even now, sometimes it's, I will feel tempted or drawn to go to my parents before I go to him, but we've kind of worked through that, and we're in a healthier place than we were first year of marriage. But what was the question again? Oh, the boundaries. So then the boundaries came about when finally, there was kind of a breaking point for Derwin and I, where he was like, listen, you can't keep going to your parents. I mean, it's just unhealthy that you do that. And so I literally, I did this kind of a passive aggressive way. I sent a letter to them and just kind of said, I have to stop leaning on you guys. I have to allow my husband to be the leader, and I have to start cleaving to him, and I have to leave you guys. And I got a good bit of silence from them. I didn't hear from them for like a couple of weeks. And then finally, my mom called and she said, I really want us to talk. So we, the four of us sat down and we talked, and, I just explained to them, it's not that I don't want their advice or their opinion or anything like that, but it just was super unhealthy. With the amount of involvement they had in our marriage because of me. So, and I think that was just hard, setting the boundaries.
I think that speaks to why the coaching stage is so important. So, the commanding stage, birth to 12, you literally dictate all that your children do, but there has to be a time when you're kind of turning that a little bit to where you're allowing them to make decisions and allowing them to mess up and allowing them to, while they're still in your home, do things that you just would not want them to do, but you're allowing them to fail and to fall under your care, so that when you shoot them out into the world, at 18 or whenever or after, they kind of have developed the skills to know how to do life.
Yeah.
And I think if Jacqueline were honest, what she would say is, I didn't know how to do life because I was almost underdeveloped.
Yeah.
And that was because the commanding stage continued all the way through it. There was literally no coaching. It was commanding all the way through. And so when we understand these distinct stages, we can get the idea that if I don't allow my children to go through these stages properly, I am setting them up for failure.
It will be detrimental.
Yeah. And so that's just a reminder for some of you who, your kids are really, really young. Most of you on here, I think your kids are, 7 and under, most of you, maybe even younger than that. But when they get to this age, to 12, they need to start making some decisions that even, and the maturity of the child will dictate this as well, even before that, where they literally fail, they mess up. Our youngest child, who is Sheridan, she's going to be 9 next month. Her responsibility every night is to spray down the counters in the kitchen and wipe them down every night. That's her responsibility. And I would say probably half the time it's done, half the time it's not. Sometimes it's not done properly, but I'm not going to pick it up from her or take it away from her. I continually tell her, Sheridan, you did not wipe the counter down. You forgot. So today, here's your consequence. I don't always give her a consequence, but I'm literally trying to help her realize you can be responsible at 8 years old. You can learn to be responsible, and that will help her when she's 18 to know, I have to be responsible. I live with others. I need to think about how my behavior affects others. And so that is part of that coaching. And for her, she's still in the commanding stage, but because she has older siblings, and we can even get into the whole birth order thing, because she has older siblings, she almost is a little bit older than an 8-year-old. Her oldest sibling, her brother, Sebastian, he's 15 and a half. So she is around a lot of that mindset. And because we homeschool too, there are some unique things that they get to see that school kids may not get to see, that traditionally school kids don't get to see. But the whole goal for us is, I want you, if you're going to fail, and you are going to fail, fail while I can help you get back on I can coach you properly. I don't want you to fail when you're an adult, because adult failure has far greater consequences. So let's have you fail now, where daddy and mommy can help you through that. All right. So question from Ernesto for you, mom and dad, Ernesto and Katie. What is one thing that your generation of parents did that you wish this generation did more of? And Dad, you can answer first if you heard the question.
I didn't get that.
What our parents did for us in our generation that we wish the ones who do not, that people raising children would do not.
Well, as you all know, I didn't grow up fully with parents. I lost my dad at 7. I lost my mom at 15. But I tried, even though I didn't have the experience, I tried when I was raising my children to show them a lot of love. Even though you all probably would think that you got a lot of licks, right?
Yeah, we did.
It's not funny.
We did, yeah.
Even though you may think you got a lot of licks, you didn't see licks yet. If you had grown up in the West Indies, then you would have seen how many licks you will get, you know?
So let me ask you this, Dad. So would you say that you wish that this generation gave more spankings than your generation did?
Well, the Bible says it, Darwin, spare not the rod and spoil the child, right? Nowadays people beat you in sentences. Long ago, they used to beat you in words. And I explain what I mean by that. Long ago, they catch you and said, no, nowadays, they beat you, they said, I tell you not to go out on the street. Wax! You never want to listen to me. Wax! Long ago is, I tell you
They
thing I'm
get more
talking about.
licks.
So more
That's the
lit.
kind of
You
thing.
think they need
Yeah.
more licks?
I think they need more spanking
Yes.
between certain ages.
Gotcha.
Like between 5 and 12, they need more spanking.
Okay. Mom, what about you?
Well, I see it both ways. Some of the things that we grew up with as disciplinary actions, I don't totally agree with. For example, a child should be seen and not heard. I think children should be able to voice their opinions respectfully. They should be able to say, why they're unhappy or whatever. But today's world, I think, especially I see the very young parents, you can't buy a child's love. And it mostly is focused on buying them things, giving them, and not only inexpensive things, very expensive stuff, like a name brand this, a name brand that. And I think that is so wrong because, for example, when kids grow up, they may not be able to afford those things. So you have to let them know the value of money, right, in today's world, and let them know that, love cannot be bought. You love them unconditionally, period. So love cannot be bought. You can't just buy them things. They need to learn more value, and they need more discipline as well. Because some parents let the kids get away with too many things. I see it in the stores. The kids are picking up stuff. The parents say, okay, if you do that one more time, we're leaving. And I've watched the parents, they don't leave, and the kids keep repeating the same activities. You can't do that. You're reinforcing negative behavior. So you have to follow through, and that's a problem I see today.
Good. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. So here's the reverse of that. What is one thing this generation is doing right that the past generation was not necessarily doing?
I think some psychological intervention is good. We see that more today, right? Where the kids are allowed, like I said before, to voice their opinions. That's good. Because you don't want your children to grow up in a cocoon. They're so afraid to speak. You see what I'm saying? We grew up more sheltered. Yes. Whereas the
Emotionally
kids,
sheltered. Emotionally sheltered.
emotionally. And the kids now, oh, you look at them, they're so outspoken, and that's good. I like to see that. And what else? Like I said, they don't have to get licks all the time, but licks, we call it licks or spanking, right? Americans would say spanking. Spanking is appropriate depending on the child's age and the circumstance, right? For example, when a child is little, Bible tells us, train up away in the child and don't spare the rod and spoil the child. So that has its time and place. But we have to be careful with that as well. Because in America, they'll lock you up for child abuse.
Right.
And that's another thing. We have to deal more with the court system now. So all those things play a role in the minds of the children. Because I know when we lived in New York, I've heard children say, well, if you spank me, I'm going to call the authorities. Yes, so we have to deal with all those things. Long ago, if you spank your child, there's no authorities to go to. The authorities will probably come back and bring the child for you to give him another spank. So it's a completely different world we live in.
Right.
And so therefore, we have to be mindful of that as well.
Yeah, that's
But,
good. Dad, what about you? What do you see
Kids
that
nowadays,
this generation is doing well that maybe your generation didn't do?
What the generation now is doing well raising the kids that our generation didn't do as well.
Our generation didn't do?
As well. What you think?
Well, the kids now, I don't know.
You
Because
think they did everything well long ago?
I won't say they did everything well because nobody is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But what I want to say is that kids nowadays are rude and disrespectful.
Some of them.
Most of them. You go there on the street and you hear a child curse, you talk to them, and they'll turn around and curse you, right? I'll give you an instance. When we were in New York, I used to walk from home to Utica Avenue to catch the bus and then to the subway. And one morning I saw these kids were going to school. And we used to like buy the newspaper and leave the money there. I left my money, took up the newspaper, and this young girl come and pick up the money that I left there. I was heading to school. And I said, that is not nice what you're doing. And she told him, Mr. F you. Right? I was a grown man, she was a little school child. That's what the kids nowadays are rude and disrespectful. Now, if I had dared to tell an adult like that when I was growing up, the first thing the adult would have done, beat me and take me home to my mother. That girl wasn't more than 12, maybe 11. And I would get a spanking from my mother too. Right? So, you know, I don't know. I don't know what to say about parents raising kids nowadays. Thank God I don't have to.
Yeah, I think so. Here's a question from Shar. That was good, Mom and Dad. Thank you. Shar says, I think this is more so, I guess Mom and Dad, you can answer this too, but the question is, what are some consequences when we don't allow our kids to fail in the coaching stage? So that 12 to 17 years old, do you think the kid gets frustrated because they don't have increased responsibilities, privileges, and freedom? So I will say that some of that we talked about before when we were addressing kind of letting the kids fail in front of you. But I would say, I don't think that during that stage, they're frustrated that they don't have the responsibility and the privilege. And they could be a little frustrated, but I think they'll really be frustrated when they realize, you know, when they're in the counseling stage, when they're older, that my mom and dad failed me when they did not allow me to fail when I was younger. You know, I think that's when we'll see the detriment of that. And so it's so important. And I think, Morgan, this kind of goes with what you're saying too. You said, thank you for sharing. There is this is a large concern of mine, staying in the commanding phase too long, because this is how I was raised. It has been detrimental. So the commanding stage is birth to 12, where you are literally dictating everything your child is doing. Jacqueline or Derwin's parents, any tangible advice to help me avoid perpetuating my upbringing, the commanding phase, for too long? So Mom and Dad, if you want to speak, or Jacqueline, why don't you take that? What's some advice that you would give Morgan in regards to not staying in that commanding stage too long?
Okay. Well, you know, being that we're older and we're adults, we know, even as Christians, no one's perfect. That's the reason why we have Jesus. And so our parents, or even our grandparents, were taught a certain way. Then our parents were taught a certain way. So it really is kind of just your parents probably did what they did because that's what they knew. But Morgan, you know better now. So you can do better. And it literally is a choice. It's a situation by situation choice. Like of course, you can make you can have a goal with you and your wife to treat certain situations a certain way. But then when you're faced with those situations, you just say to yourself, okay, you know, whether, you know, you don't want to control your children in a certain area, or you literally want them to fail and all of that. It just is saying, okay, Lord, help me through this situation. Help me to listen more than to act. Help me to be open and available to my child, and just try your best to do the opposite of what your parents did. Does that mean it's going to feel good? Probably not. It doesn't mean it's going to feel uncomfortable? Probably, because you know what you're used to. So you're going against the grain of what your parents have instilled in you. So it's going to be hard, but you will see whatever your goal is for your children, you will start to see the fruit of that, you know, as time goes along.
Yeah. And I'll add too to that. it's gonna, you know how you've heard people say, I'll never do that. I'll never do what my parents did. I'm not, this thing that they did, I will never do that to my kids. And then you literally repeat exactly
Yep.
what your parents did,
Yeah.
or you say things that you said, I'm never going to say that to my child. And then you say it and you're like, what just happened?
Yeah.
What just happened? How did this happen? Well, we are products of our environment. And so if you've been nurtured doing something, seeing something, you are prone to repeat that.
Mhm.
And so there has to be, at some level, the intentionality of saying, I am literally not going to do this thing. One of the things for us that was really important was for our kids to always see teamwork. So it wasn't a thing of, and we didn't want them to see that, okay, that job is daddy's, that's mommy's. I was raised in a home where my mom and my dad both cooked. Both of them cooked. Guess what? We both cook. Now, Jacqueline doesn't really like to cook. I like to cook, so I do a lot of the cooking. I was raised in a home where everybody cleaned. So guess what happens? Everybody in this house cleans. We all are responsible for keeping things clean. So I think some of it for you, Morgan, and we're going a little bit further than your question, the boundaries of your question, but that commanding stage, literally, you're going to have to find yourself being comfortable with allowing your children to make mistakes and to do things that are going to stretch you, but also going to stretch them and make it so much better for them when they get older. Because as you said, your parents kept you in that commanding stage for far too long. And I think the word that you used was detrimental. Detrimental is never a good word. And so detrimental to your emotional health, your psychological health, your social health probably. And so knowing that, and this is, I guess, the big difference for even our generation versus my parents' generation is we have the psychological input. We have the emotional input. We have psychologists that have told us things that we understand. Okay, so if we say this to our child, they might take that with them for the rest of their life. And so we don't want to say these things or do these things. They didn't have that luxury. And so because we know these things, we are, and the Bible says that him who knows the truth and does not do it, to him it is sin. And so we know these things. And I think it is sinful to not allow your children to because if the Bible is true, and it is, when the Bible says that we are to shoot our children out in the as arrows into the world, arrows do damage. And they do damage for the Lord. It's not that word picture is that the children are going to do damage for the Lord. Well, if they're ill prepared, they're not going to be able to do damage. How do they then get prepared? So you almost have to reverse engineer what that passage is saying to understand what what the application is for you as a parent. I need to do my best to prepare my children. I'm not going to prepare them well if I do everything for them, if I don't allow them to mess up. I have one child who likes to cut the grass. And so I let her cut the grass. I didn't really like to let her cut the grass, but then I realized, no, she loves it. And she the first time she did it, she missed spots and all of this. Did I condemn her? No, I'm like, baby girl, you did a great job. Let me show you when you do this the next time, how you can even do a better job. And so I'd show her, you go this way, you do this, you don't hit big rocks, that kind of thing. And so every time she does it, it's better. The next time it's better. The next time it's better, and just like with Sheridan, with spraying down the counter. And I think what it is celebrating those small victories too. Let them mess up and literally tell them, this wasn't good the way this turned out, but man, next time it's going to turn out great because you're going to learn from this and you're going to grow. And one day, as you probably have said, I'll never say this to my child, they're going to come back and thank you for it,
Yeah. Can I say something on that too? And just really quickly, and sometimes we are blind to what's really going on. And I say that because like I said before, my parents sheltered me, didn't want me to ever even bump my toe on something. And so I reacted the same way with my kids, just very scared. I didn't want them to go out and experience life just because I just saw the world as something very scary. And so, like Derwin was talking about Shiloh cutting the grass, and my initial instinct is I don't want her to do that because all of these bad things are running through my mind. Okay, she could go out there and she could run her leg over, or she could overheat because it was hot that day, or I mean all of these things. And it's like, okay, I have to pull myself back and just, as uncomfortable as it is, just say it is going to be best for Shiloh to go out there and try to cut the grass on her own. I mean, they need to experience, they need to do these things so that they can just experience life. And it's funny because when my parents were doing all of those things for me, inside, I kind of felt a bit, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what the word was, but I felt frustrated. And I didn't know I felt frustrated.
Anger.
I just felt, which I have, I realized I had anger issues as an adult. But I didn't realize it was because I was so frustrated that I just never got to spread my wings. And then when I got married, I was expected to spread my wings, and it was scary. Yeah. I did not know what to do. I did not know how to function as an adult. And then that would make me angry because I would be like, but I want to do those things. But the fear was just so overwhelming that it literally left me handicapped.
Paralyzed.
Completely paralyzed. Yeah. And so when you use the word detrimental, I can completely empathize with you in that, because it's the feelings and the emotions that come along with that. It's not just like the physical limitations. It really has an emotional, it can be emotionally damaging. And because I know that, I do not want my children to experience that. So that in itself drives me to say, okay, as much as I want to say, no, don't do that, don't go do that, don't experience this, it is going to be for their best interest that I help them and coach them in that coaching stage, let them fall, let them fail, and then be right there to help them up and say, this is what you do. This is what we do. You know,
it's good. It's very good. Very good.
You're doing great, Morgan.
Yes. Morgan says, I can relate. Thank you for your honesty. Yes. Awesome. All right. Do we have time? Yes. One more question. We do have time for it. All right, so Mom and Dad, this is for you. What are you most proud about in how you raised your adult children? What are you most proud about in how you raised your adult children?
Let me go. I am proud about giving them what my parents hadn't the chance to give me, and that's a sound education. And when I said a sound education, I'm talking about spiritually and academically. Okay, and that's what I'm proud about.
That's good.
Because even though my mother tried after my father died, every Sunday she used to get me reading 2 Psalms at least, right? So that is why every Sunday I had you all reading the Bible and all that. Make sure you go to school and get a good education.
Good.
And that is what I am very proud about.
Good. Mom, what about you?
Well, I have to echo some of what my husband just said. Yeah, we equipped you guys with good education. All 3 of you are quite different, and that's understandable. But at the end of the day, I think you all came out very decent adults, able to function in society. And I look at you, especially Derwin. We're very proud of you. You're in ministry. You're the only one with 4 children. For the grandkids, thank you so much for that. We love our grandkids. And we're grateful to you and Jackie because you couldn't have made them by yourself. Right? So
That's
we're
right.
grateful to you, Jackie, for the grandkids. And you guys are doing a wonderful job. And I can see, even though we were not perfect parents, Jackie, you got some good stuff from your parents as well as Darwin did, and you're able to put them together to raise your kids well.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys are doing a good job. Okay?
It's good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
proud of you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. All right. So Morgan Kara's question: How do you spank your toddler without it resulting in them hitting you back? Or what should we do when we spank our toddler and she hits back? Okay. So I may get disagreements on this one, but I don't think we ever had anybody hit us back. We did have one that literally would not allow us to spank them. So like it was like a gymnastic event. They would move and move and move and move. And one day, literally, I let her move, and she kind of fell over in the bathroom and hit her head on the counter. And she was like, it stunned her like you would not believe. Like she was like, "Oh, what just happened?" But then and I said, if you want to continue to do this, you can continue to move for the next half hour. But when the half hour is over and you're good and tired, you will get the spanking. And so I literally had to, because I wasn't going to stoop to her level and continue to try to move her. I wasn't doing that, because at the end of it, she was control. Because that's the whole thing. For what I see, it's they are trying to control the situation. And if they can control the situation, then they have won. And so what I would specifically say, I might get some pushback on this one, but I always operated with the spanking that I wasn't going to spank them a lot, but the spankings that I was going to give them were going to be very meaningful. And so you can translate that however you want, but they were going to be extremely meaningful. So if they were 2 and they were getting 2 swats, because that's all we would do as with their age, then those 2 swats would be very meaningful, extremely meaningful. And I think you understand what I mean when I say that. And so if it's just a, don't do that real, then that's frustrating to her, because it's like, that's all you got. This is how you're going to discipline me. And so she's going to control it because she doesn't want to even get that. But if they deliver a punch and some heat, if they're really, because that is what, and I do think that there are children, they are harder willed, their will is stronger. And so with those children, because we have a child that didn't get a lot of spankings at all. A stern voice was like the jar for her. But then we have another child where the spankings were a lot, and they were very full of heat. And the heat is what allowed her to realize, I don't want to deal with this. I can't take this. It broke my heart every time I had to do it. And Jacqueline, it really broke her heart. She literally, I'd get
answer after you.
I would get a phone call, and the phone call would be, I can't deal with her. I don't know what to do. Well, did you try spanking? I don't know if we need to continue doing that. I said, well, if you want to continue dealing with this over and over and over and over and over and over again, then you're going to keep on calling me, because this is not going to stop. And I said, if you want me to deal with it when I get home, which we didn't like to do that good cop, bad cop thing, but literally it became a situation where the spanking had to be with some heat so that child would realize, I don't want this again. Go ahead, Jacqueline.
Okay. Cara, I'm going to answer you from the mama bear point of view, because when you, and whether you've had your children naturally or you've had a C-section, you still know the experience, the emotions that come behind your connection to that child. And even if your child is adopted, you still have this mommy jello-y part of you that really does not want your child to hurt, even if you know it's going to be good for them. So therein lies the spanking. So for our children, none of them ever hit us. They just didn't. I do know that there are parents out there who are very strict, very firm, but their children do hit them. Okay. So it's not, I think it really just is dependent upon the child.
Mhm.
But, you know, people may laugh about Super Nanny and her antics and stuff, but I do believe that some of those things do work. And when you're dealing with a toddler, it's really hard sometimes to communicate, you know, this is what I want you to do, you know, but it really comes down to consistency. And if if you are
Good.
spanking your child and your child is coming back and hitting you, what I would probably do, and like I said, I did not have a child that hit me, but if I did, I would literally probably physically pick I would go down to their level, say, you are not going to hit me. And I would pick that child up and put them in a chair, in a room, in a something. And if they tried to come back out, I would put them back in and say, you are here because you hit mommy and you are not to hit mommy. And we would just have to do that until that child understood you're not supposed to hit me. And if you decide to spank, then you implement spanking into that. But I think there has to be some consistency of you like focusing on you do not hit mommy, and mommy is not going to accept that, because once you let her hit you and then you just say, oh, you're not to hit mommy, and you're walking away, and I've just seen it. I don't know if this is your scenario, but you're walking away and the child is just, you know, wailing behind you, hitting your legs as you're walking away. That's not really having a clear effect on you're not going to hit mommy. That is, mommy's tired of you and now I'm going to walk away, and your behavior is still continuing, and it shouldn't. Like, the focus will need to be on letting that child know you are not to hit me, and whatever you need to use to make that clear to your child, then that's what you should do. I am not the type of person who will say we spanked, so everybody needs to spank. I really do believe that everyone should take these things, parenting, take them to the Lord in prayer. Ask the Lord, how am I supposed to deal with this child? Because children are very different, and you can't treat them all the same. There is no one fix for every child. I mean, you really have to learn your kid. You got to know what's going to have an effect, and then you go with that. And like I said earlier in our classes, you just have to be consistent. Whatever you choose to do, be consistent. Do not waver from whatever you choose to do. Because once you waver, it just a little bit, that child's like, yep, she ain't serious. He's not serious.
And I think, to add what Jacqueline said, I think knowing the difference in your children is key, because, you know, with 4 children, we run the spectrum of personalities and how they deal with things. And this one mumbles, this one gets angry, this one, you know, storms away, and this one gets silent. And knowing, okay, I need to help the one that's angry learn how to deal with that anger. You know, you can be angry, but you're not going to sin. And how do I deal with that properly? Or the one that's quiet, helping them to, because they may want to believe, they don't care, and they're disengaging, but they're emotionally shutting down. Guess what? That's not going to work for you throughout life. You can't just shut people out and shut down. You have to learn how to communicate appropriately in different situations. And a part of parenting is helping your child learn how to do that appropriately and communicate appropriately. But man, it's not easy. That's the thing, you know, as we said at the beginning, we have an enemy and things are always changing. You, Cara and Morgan, you had 1 child, now you have 2. Now you've added more to the mix. And then if you have another one, and then if you have a boy, it's just, things are constantly changing. And with those changes become the challenges for us as parents of, I don't know what to do with this. I literally don't know what to do with this right now. And you take it to the Lord. You possibly, if you have your parents in your life, can ask them, how did you deal with this? What did you do when this happened? And so, yeah, there's so much that goes into being parenting, but the good thing is we don't have to do this by ourselves. We have a community. We have the Lord. We have Christ. We have a community of people that we can go and say, just like we're doing tonight. What did you do? What did you do? And we learn from each other, and we grow in our understanding of how God wants us to parent these children he gave us. So.
And extending yourself grace also, because we're not perfect and our children are not perfect. And, we're all doing this blindly, honestly. We really are. And it's hard. It's every time I think about it, I think of the image of a newborn giraffe or a newborn deer. Like when they're walking around, they're trying to walk and they're all flimsy and looking all crazy. I think that's how parenting is to me. It's just super sloppy. And we won't get it right, but we try our best to be righteous in our ways and to teach our children those righteous ways. So
amen. Well, as we close, Mom and Dad, is there anything you want to add and say as a final word to everybody here tonight?
Well, I think raising children in this world now is a truly challenging process for young people. And more so, they need the Lord. Make God the leader of everything you do. Raising your child, your work environment, everything. And everything gonna fall in place. God is good. He's a forgiving God. You mess up, you ask for forgiveness and move on. Don't hold on to it. Remember, God forgives and he loves us. He doesn't want his children to go on living in misery. That's why he came and died for us, okay?
Good. That's good. What about you, Dad? Any final words for us? Words of wisdom?
Parents nowadays need Jesus.
Always.
Right? I mean, we always did, but more so nowadays than before. Right? Because you have some kids that will try your faith. And if you don't have Jesus in you, I don't know what you will do with them.
That's good.
Okay? And Jesus said, suffer the little children to come unto me and forbid them not, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So you have to have patience with them. You have to have patience ever since, but more so now than ever.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for doing your best to raise your 3 children. And I think you did a great job.
You did a great job.
Yes. So I am thankful for you.
Yep.
You're welcome.
We tried.
Yes.
And thanks for you guys having us as participants in your program, okay?
You're welcome.
God bless everyone.
Yes. Thank you. We got one last.
You're welcome. Okay, good night.
Comment. This is from Chan. Yes.
And don't forget, in 2 days is my birthday.
Yes.
I don't think I will be able to forget that because you'll call me tomorrow and tell me, and then you'll call me on
Your birthday.
Thursday.
Yes.
All right, Jackie. Love you guys.
Love you guys.
Chan, Jacqueline.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
So,